What is up, everybody? It's another week of the High Tech Podcast. That's right. I'm Josh Schwartz, one of the hosts of the High Tech Podcast, joined by the other host, the one, the only, William Illingworth. What's up, Will? How we doing this week?
Oh, we're making it work, my friend. It's been a little bit of a laggish day. I feel like my buffering speeds have been down, but we're here. We're energized.
Like
We've
digital
got new
buffering
ideas.
speeds, or just like
like my real life.
Oh, your
I
real
woke up
life.
and wanted to go right back to bed.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, I feel that as well, but that's probably the 5 a.m. with a new baby vibe on my
the
end.
new dad thing probably.
Probably
Yeah.
my thing. It's been a little bit of a. It was
that kind of Tuesday.
A little bit of a day, you know. It was fine. For the most part, it was fine.
Tis what it is.
Yeah.
I will say I'm excited because not only, not skipping ahead, what are we going to get into this for the episode, but like the work I've been doing recently is very AI centric. And so there's a lot of exciting things happening around work. It's not like it wasn't a good day and work's not moving forwards and stuff, but I just want to go back to bed.
Yeah, I feel that sometimes for sure.
Yeah.
Alarms are less fun at this moment in time. But yeah, whatever, it's fine.
No doubt.
Anyway, enough of our personal problems. Welcome to the High Tech Podcast. This week we are going to be continuing our AI conversations we've been doing on the podcast recently. Honestly, it's going to be AI for a while, folks. We keep making the joke, if you don't want to hear about AI, stop listening to these episodes because the stats communicate differently. So that's
that, and the world. Everybody's doing.
Well, in Will and I's worlds are focused on this right now in some ways, so I think it's probably why we're gonna end up talking about it a lot. But before we do that, just a reminder: make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Like the podcast. I almost said like the subscribe. Like the podcast. Wherever you need to, or if you listen to it on podcast platforms, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to go over and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's super helpful. We post lots of fun stuff there, including clips and things from the episodes. So make sure to do that and to follow us on all the socials. As a reminder, you can find us on all social media, either at High Tech Podcast or at High Tech Pod. Figure it out. We don't remember which one's which, and we're not going to go through it here. But you can find us somewhere on the social media. Make sure to check it out. Our wonderful social media manager, Chris, is back and in full speed doing his stuff.
Thank you, Chris.
And so there'll be some new cool stuff popping up on social media over the next couple weeks. Make sure to go check that out. Reminder, if you'd like to be on the podcast, have thoughts, want to tell us what you think, and you don't want to DM us on Instagram because it's not going to work because Chris is the one who manages it, so we probably won't answer you. You're going to hit us up. Make sure to hit us up at our email at inbox@hightechpod.us. It's a great way. Many people have done that and have gotten on the podcast because of that. Side note: this is a sponsor joke today. Will we're not a sponsored podcast at this moment. And I
want to be.
You can email us at inbox@hightechpod.us. But this is what reminded me of this. Today I had a thought while I was making my dinner that we should do a thing that I'm going to start calling reverse sponsorship, which is where we invent fake companies and then somebody else starts that company and sponsors us. That's what I think should happen. So maybe like each episode we come up with a company we wish existed. And then you listeners, it's on you to create them. Will and I don't want to do that. That's a lot of work. But you should do it.
Practically manifesting sponsors into existence. That's what you're saying.
Actually, manifesting sponsors is a better way to put that. Because reverse sponsorship would just be us sponsoring a company. Which would be like
paying people
to be on our podcast. Yeah, that's exactly. A different thing. I don't want to do that. Manifesting sponsorships. That's gonna be our new thing. We'll come up with a company maybe that somebody needs to start. I don't know what it's gonna be. Today, I think it will be making rubber duckies. But like Bluetooth rubber duckies. I don't know why that's a thing.
With like speakers, like Bluetooth speaker.
I haven't really thought that far ahead. I just think I want rubber duckies with Bluetooth in them. However that manifests itself, that's up to you, listener, to figure that out. But there you go. If you make that company, email us at inbox@hightechpod.us and you can sponsor the podcast because I think that'd be funny.
Love that.
That'd be hilarious. Anyway, also a reminder, we also have a website, hightechpod.us. Every episode has an episode page, including links out to resources. If we do fun stuff and create fun things that we can share on the podcast, we put them there. For instance, our 2 recent episodes on AI and gaming, Will and I shared links to the what maybe qualifies as games. The tank games that we made, they are linked to
They're close.
our episodes. Which actually, side note, Robin, I think is actually gonna do something cool in her class with Rosebud AI because of our Rosebud AI episode. If Robin's listening, or she was talking the other day about
Finger guns.
having students create. She teaches education students, having students create AI games in her like education play class. She has a class about how play integrates with education.
That's so good, and even if it's not for play, like that's perfect, perfectly aligned. But even if you just went to any ed class and just like, hey, build this game, make it playable, make it a little fun, the thinking process, like you and I experienced, that goes into that process is critical to education. Like, you have to be prepared for all the things that are not something you're going to expect, like when the tank doesn't fire the correct direction, or all the enemies swarm your tank because there's too many of them.
I liked how my game had the build. Just a side note, folks, if you haven't listened to the episode, one of our recent episodes, AI and Gaming part 2, I forget if we called it part 2 or AI and Gaming again, just go check out our website. It's there somewhere. I don't have the episode page things open in front of me right now. Will's trying to open them. Actually, that one just happened recently, so I could probably just scroll over on the board and find it. Hey, episode 188, using AI to make games ... again, featuring Rosebud AI. Go check out that episode, and then the episode that came earlier before it was a couple episodes before it. 184. We talk about how to make games with AI. Will and I have this joke on the podcast about tank courses. Like, that was always our excuse course that we'd go, or example course we'd go to when we were trying to like give course examples from a learning and development standpoint on the podcast. And so it's just kind of like shown up in things. So we decided to create tank games, and in a couple episodes ago when we tried to use Rosebud, we had some interesting times. But I preferred my game from that episode, where buildings would just fall from the sky, and if you were in the wrong spot, your tank just got stuck. I thought that was a good vibe. Yeah, it was kind of like Doctor Strange meets a tank game, you know? That's how I was feeling. Anyway, on that note, enough of that. We're not going to be talking about how to make games with AI, but we are going to be talking about something that Will and I are terming. I want to note this. We have not done research to see if other people are terming it this, but in our day and age right now, we're hearing terms like AI assistant, AI agent. Agenic AI is another term I've heard thrown around, which just feels like an extreme way of saying AI agent. Like somebody just didn't want to put agent after AI. It's like they were like Bond, James Bond. And so they were like agenic AI. Anyway, there's a lot of different titles running around, and Will and I want to get in the game of titling things because we feel like this could, with manifesting sponsorships, we can also create terminology that impacts the internet.
All we need is one episode to go viral, and the podcast changes forever.
The pirate? We're a pirate ship now.
The Horror Tech Podcast.
I love that. That needs to be an episode. No, please, hold on to that. That needs to be an episode. Anyway, we're terming things. We've decided all of these terms are too complicated. They're too fancy. Okay, well, Will and we don't want an agent. We don't want an assistant. We're not cool enough for an assistant. We want a buddy, okay? Will and I don't have enough friends. We need buddies. So we are terming this thing called the AI buddy. And we want to talk about that today and how it can save us time. Now, what is an AI buddy, Will? What options do we have for that? I just built up like we aren't going to use those terms, and I'm going to ask you to use those terms.
That was so perfect. I mean, honestly, I just loved that. You stuck the landing, my friend. All right, so just briefly, we are going to use AI Buddy because there are too many different terms. There's nobody, codifying AI yet. There's some things actually coming out of Europe that are trying to push towards some early regulation. There are some states in the United States that have started making laws and trying to codify this, but still, it's up to marketing. All of these names depend on marketing. And so the two that I have experience with, and there are several companies reinforcing this, are assistant and agent. And the biggest difference is that an assistant might be able to answer questions or find different information for you. The technical term is called RAG. It's retrieval augmented generation. But an agent is something that can go and take action for you. And so we're going to split the difference. We're going to talk about all the above. But when we think about the work we're trying to accomplish, and even some of the people who are raising these concerns about AI, like it's going to take jobs and all this other stuff, I want to kind of put some of that to bed for the moment, right? AI assistants already exist. They're doing well. They've actually been in the market even since before ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is this big turning point in history where we get OpenAI, we get the access to LLMs, and all of it changes. But before ChatGPT, if you went to any of your big box websites, bestbuy.com, AT&T.com, whatever, right? These big box websites, you clicked chat now, that was technically RAG. Now, was it RAG in the sense that it was querying this huge database LLM and there's millions and billions of pieces of information in it? No. But it was RAG in the sense that if you asked, what are the store hours, you didn't get a human. Josh wasn't sitting on the other side of that chat support going, oh, yes, Will, the store hours this week are 8 to 5.
Not on the Best Buy website, but, maybe the LBC support line for Canvas.
Sure. Josh hated those days, but... No, just joking. Like those tools were already using RAG. They built answers in the background, and depending on the 6 different ways you might ask the question, it would always give you kind of the same or similar answers. So like that is what this AI buddy world is about. We've been using these things for some time. It's not new. ChatGPT blew it up exponentially. There's so much more possible.
They made it more broadly useful, right? Like I think what ChatGPT and AI as we see it today has done is it's taken that idea of like they call it agents or whatever, but the buddy concept that Will and I are coming with is like this idea that you had a little thing that you could go chat with and talk with, and it would give you answers to things, right? Or it would give you information and make it easier to access information in a way that, like, going and searching a website can be difficult at times when it's got a lot of resources, right? That's not anything new. I mean, people keep making these jokes, but it's real. Like, Clippy existed before anybody was freaking out about whether Terminator was going to kill somebody. Like, and at its base level, Clippy was that. Which, side note, real quick, a coworker of mine has a Lego Clippy on his desk now. Drew got a Lego Clippy. Like a full, like a big one. It's like this big. I'll just show it to you or get you to take a picture sometime. I love it. Awesome. Anyway. So like that's nothing new. I think though what ChatGPT and things did is it made it more broadly accessible and useful, right? Like, okay, sure, we like having a buddy on Best Buy's website that can give us answers to things, but how many times per our day are we like, man, I wish I knew what was going on the Best Buy website? Like that's not well, okay.
0 times.
Yes, okay. Like I thought you were about to be like, okay, sometimes.
No, you were like, no, dude, I've been shopping at Best Buy all week. I dropped like 10 grand. I completely redid my room. No,
it's been crazy. No, like obviously a lot of us didn't find that super useful. So like the ability to create one that every day was useful was the learning curve was much larger because you had to build out all these different scenarios and parameters. And what LLM technology has kind of done is, I think, make creating these things more accessible, and then also giving us tools like ChatGPT, like Claude, like Perplexity that are all connected to the broader internet, and now it's making internet searching better than it used to be, right? Like it's maybe and some people might argue that.
I think you're right. The thing that's fun about this though, like the idea and the words assistant and agent, they're getting into this because the goal, like Best Buy and all those examples, it was like a chat support.
Yeah.
Answering a very, very specific problem or question. People are now looking for AI assistants to help them do work. That's like where this thing's starting to change and where it's kind of tilting a little bit, and why those tools don't accomplish the full task of like AI. If I looked at like Best Buy's chat support thing, I don't necessarily think that's AI because it can only answer a limited set of questions. And it can only answer with a limited set of information. Like you're just saying, though, you add the internet in there, skipping a little bit in our thoughts for today, but, just you with Notion, that solves so many problems. You've got this middle ground experience where it's like Notion is this locked in box and you happen to have tens of thousands of items.
Oh, so
in
many
your Notion.
pages.
Who even knows, right?
I could find the number, but it'd be terrifying. It would take forever to load. I think last time I checked, it was over 9,000. And I'm not just saying that because it's a Dragon Ball Z reference. Over 9,000 power. It was like over 9,000 pages, I think, in my Notion last time I checked, which was like last spring, so about a year ago.
That's actually, like, let's just say that the Best Buy example, it's pretty limited. Now this steps up, and you can search anything and anywhere in your Notion. Now search has always existed, but you've talked about it time and time again on the podcast. Like, you don't just search; it answers questions for you about.
Oh yeah, it like cites my own work, right? And so so backtracking real quick before we get too far into that, right? I think. Yep. This is where I see the real power in AI, and honestly, it's where I see misconceptions happening about people who don't understand what AI's uses are, right? So I'm seeing this in real time because I'm involved in something that just put out a survey to like hundreds and hundreds of people on AI, and I've been reading responses recently, and I've been interested to see, especially faculty responses, that like very much only look at AI like it's a writing tool because that's what their students are using it for, and so. Right. They see it as a big problem. Like people need to know how to write. Okay, yes, I agree. But AI does a lot more than just write, right? Like the things I use AI for, yes, absolutely writing is a part of it. It's like for me, because I'm just not great at editing, and I don't want to waste a bunch of time on it while I'm doing other stuff throughout my day. That's not my main job. I use AI tools for basically writing assistance on a regular basis, or like almost like I would have a will in my pocket all the time to bounce ideas off of about how something sounds, right? It's not like I was good at that before I started using AI and got worse. I just wasn't as good at that. And so like AI helps fill that hole for me. But another way that AI has been very useful, and I'm seeing it be more useful, is being able to do or find things for me that would normally take me a longer period of time to do. Like here's a practical example of how like ChatGPT fills this hole sometimes as like an assistant or an agent, right? I might be working on pulling data from the system, and this was just something I was just working on recently. And I needed to write a formula for pulling dates out of some data and finding the earliest date in the data, right? So it was like courses connected to start dates. I needed to find like hundreds of courses, like over 400. I needed to classify them by their earliest start date so that we could plan out for a project when things were going to run. In the past, I would build that formula. I knew how to build it, but like it would take me forever because I didn't know how to build the exact formula, so I'd have to play with it a bit to figure out what's going to work, right? Trial and error. Instead, I used an AI tool with ChatGPT to just go, hey, I need to do this. Make me a formula. And it did. And the formula was wrong. I want to point that out. It wasn't right, but it was close enough that I was like, oh, okay, I just need to change this one thing. It got the one property name wrong. And so I changed that and pasted it in. What normally would have taken me like 45 minutes took me like 5 minutes because I just had it do it for me. Or like organizing data, right? We realized like we had a data table and we needed it in a different format. Like we needed this one column to be the actual front column. Like we just need to reorganize how the data was aligned. In the past, we'd be copy and pasting and moving stuff around. We literally just dropped it into ChatGPT and said, hey, can you move this around for us? Gave it its parameters. And I went and started doing other stuff while it was finishing the data. Right? Like, that's the difference. That's the power in this idea of an AI buddy. It's not somebody who just writes things for you. It's because I don't think that's where the power really is. It's something that can change things, edit things, find things for you. And so I think where ChatGPT's power is, and some tools like that, like Claude and Perplexity, they're connected to the wider internet, so it can help you get to things faster and resources, especially tools like Perplexity. ChatGPT still, though it's gotten better, still struggles with that sometimes. So like I think those are where those tools are really powerful. It's not in just creating things for you. It's that it can kind of become like that assistant or buddy next to you to help you do some things that would have normally taken you much longer, but now allows you to focus on other stuff that's more important than that rogue work that honestly a computer can do by itself. Like we don't need to do it.
And to further reinforce your point, like I have friends now that literally just have the ChatGPT and colleagues who have the ChatGPT app on their phone and use it instead of Google. So it doesn't even have to be these like big projects or big tasks like you're talking about. Like I know people who are using it as their buddy. Like instead of asking Google, what time does this open, or how does this work, or what's this mathematical thing, they just chat GPT it. Well, why not?
Yeah.
I do the same thing with you. Like if it's not a V lookup or some basic counting or some formulas that I've kept in my Excel spreadsheet arsenal, I ask GPT. I'll just walk up to the data and be like, all right, okay, I got columns this, that, and that. I need to, all right, GPT, I have blah, 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 blah data in a spreadsheet like this. I need a formula that will evaluate whatever it is. And it just spits it out like you. I've had issues where I got to tweak them, but it's so good at it. That's what an AI buddy can do. It can make Excel quicker and easier, right? I know Excel's capable of doing the task. I know it would take me 45 minutes or hours to figure it out. So why figure it out when you can get that answer so quickly? Now, what we might lose in that is some critical thinking, but that's for future episodes. So you need to continue listening to the High Tech Podcast as we delve further and further into AI overall, because these are topics that some people like. We're sitting here talking about the good, right, Josh? And some people are going to come right out of the gate with the downfalls, like, no, this isn't good, or we're going to lose. There are experts whose jobs is just knowing Excel. Great. Good for them. I think that that's still a useful skill. There are still companies that don't use AI. And if something went wrong with my Excel spreadsheets, I wouldn't know how to troubleshoot it. I would ask AI to troubleshoot it with me and hopefully get to the answer. But there's no insurance, if you will, that it's going to work.
Yeah.
So we need to, I think, both I'm embracing these tools while being cautious of the fact that, like, if they give me something that works, I may not be able to fix it or maintain it, depending on how, what I'm working on and what I need to do with AI to get those solutions. Like it's a good tool to start using, but it's not perfect. We have to be careful. Many of these tools are also, speaking to some of the issues with them. As they're growing, there's starting to be more and more, and it's hard to tell which ones are worth using. We did our whole episode on Perplexity recently, just a few weeks ago, because we're seeing that as a tool that's doing great work with research and with citing and making it easier to work with the information you're getting, whereas ChatGPT kind of spits stuff out at you. Do we all just get rid of ChatGPT and only go over to Perplexity? No. Like, now there's people who are using GPT and Perplexity at the same time, and there's people that get rid of one and the other. And we're probably going to have new competitors in the next 6 months because this field is just exploding with solutions and people trying to make ones that are more efficient, that cost less, that use less resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But these buddies, whatever they are, assistants, agents, what other terms that start to come out in the market, these buddies are going nowhere because the goal of it is I need to do my job. Well, I want to do it faster and stronger and quicker and more efficiently.
Yeah. Now I want to highlight something. I think the buddy concept we're talking about is not solely talking about ChatGPT or a tool like Perplexity. In fact, I think it's not entirely those anyway. I think that's one form of AI, and there's ways that they can be buddies. But if I can wax a metaphor for you for a second here, Will, okay? ChatGPT as a buddy, okay? It's kind of like that buddy that you see, every 2 months. It's he like kind of knows what's going on in your life, but like if somebody so often. But if somebody really asked them, like what's going on, they might not know, or yes, like if you're having a game night every month, just hypothetically, and like ChatGPT when it comes to AI buddies is kind of like that buddy who has been so far removed from game night that he forgets how to get to his friend's house.
Just hypothetically.
A hypothetical scenario that just happened this weekend. Sorry, side note, we have a game nights, and Will has not been at those game nights in a while, which is ironic because he's the old, there are people in this game night with, like, kids. Things that would, like, really obligate people. Like, Will's the one who's, like, never there. Like, the ones with kids are there. But, like, Will's the one who's, like, never there. He came to the game night this weekend, and it was realized that he, one, forgot how to get to our friend's house. We had to give him his address. And two, had not seen his new table that he had had for a year. Like that.
Yeah, it's been at least 16 to 18 months since I've been in his house. Yeah.
So ChatGPT is kind of like that. You ask it questions, you ask it to do things for you, but it doesn't really know you, right? Yeah. It doesn't know your preferences. It doesn't know the resources you're working for. It doesn't know your specific context. And so it still misses, in my opinion, the mark on this buddy level, right? So what Will and I are really talking about in this episode, and honestly we'll be talking about next week as well, is not about using ChatGPT and Perplexity specifically. It's right. about, and I keep using those as examples, but Claude, Google's AI, Copilot that accidentally got installed from all computers at the last Windows update. Anyway, we're not talking about those. Those, they can become that with some setup. We're talking more about an AI buddy used well, is an AI solution that's connected directly to resources you have, right? So like a middle ground would be like Notion and Notebook LM. And actually Notebook LM is probably a little bit closer to this because you can actually do direct connections with Notebook LM. And it's kind of like the everyman's tool for doing this. But like Notion AI is my experience, right? And Will was just talking about that. My Notion AI can access internet stuff, but predominantly it accesses my notes, my tasks, my project pages in Notion. And so I can ask it
anything
questions.
You put in there.
Anything I put in
the
there.
value for you. If it's in Notion, it can use it. So you might go get information that's not in Notion, put it in there, so you have access.
Yeah, so I have access to it, right? Yeah. I use. We've talked about it before on the podcast. It's Readwise. I use that tool to put all of my notes for books and stuff in there. So like it has access to all of that stuff. So when I ask Notion AI questions about topics that I specifically have resources on, it's giving me answers and aggregating them and crafting them based on things I've written or things I've put in my knowledge base or my tasks. And so what that does do is I get a lot better contextual answers from that when I'm asking questions. Like if I'm asking questions on a topic in, for instance, agile instructional design, right? I will get an answer back that's based on books I've read. It's based on notes I've taken from courses. It's based on plans I've created, processes I've built. Those are all in my Notion. And so it can give me kind of answers based on my stuff. I've even noticed with Notion, I can have it really starts to learn my voice for writing. And so when it's writing things kind of how I would write stuff. I've noticed it over the last year of using it, start to kind of get more in tune with the way I write things. I still have to change stuff, but I will note it barely says cheers anymore. This was a joke in the beginning of the time that it used to say cheers all the time like Will does. It doesn't say that anymore. But one of the problems with Notion AI is I didn't build it and specifically tell it what resources to access. It just accesses everything, right? So if you're like me with 9,000 pages in Notion and several of those are tasks that might reference agile instructional design, but don't really say anything substantive about it. I get sometimes some wild answers, or I have a hard time getting it to find certain resources at times because there's so much information and I haven't told it specifically. And that brings us to what I would talk about is more of the ideal, right? Yes. So like is whether it's a personal solution you set up through Notebook LM or another tool like Notebook LM, or an institutional or organizational tool. The real ideal, I think, is a custom built or like custom integrated, right? There are a lot of softwares that offer this. We're going to talk about one today. But a custom solution where you can choose what databases, what resources, what it accesses, and can give it instructions on how to respond. Notion AI, I can't customize its instructions aside from the different way I write my prompts, right? Yeah. More specifically built agents or buddies, or assistants, like buddies, we'll just use buddies. I'm just using my terminology now, right? More AI built buddies is like that buddy who comes to game night every month, and you see them occasionally on a Thursday, or you hang out, every couple weeks, or you podcast with them every night on a Tuesday night, right? They know what's going on with your life intimately. Well, not too intimately, but they can give it very specific answers and honestly operate as if you were there without being there, right?
Yep.
That's what
Yeah,
we're looking for in this custom solution. And Will, that's what you've been involved in trying to pursue at your work level, correct?
correct. And that's one of those things that I think we're working through kind of like three different layers here. And the thing that overarches all of them and makes the difference is instructions, right? So with GPT, with Notion, there are instructions in play. If I talk to GPT, everything I tell it is an instruction. But every time I have a conversation with it, I have to give it those instructions. AI in Notion has instructions. Its instructions are search everything inside of Notion, right? And so when you give it a prompt, it is already confining itself to all Notion, but not enough. We're going to get into Dust. Dust is a tool, and it's going to help me kind of process this conversation. But this customer, this enterprise approach to AI buddies is building a tool and a buddy that has all of those instructions baked into it for a purpose, for a specific purpose. That purpose can be broad, like understand the entire high-tech podcast, or it can be narrow, like what happened in episode 168, right? That purpose is up to you. But we're going to talk about Dust in a second, even show some on screen to kind of get around to the point of how this works, because these instructions are what makes the difference. If I want to make a brand guardian, I'm going to call it that, right? So I've got the high-tech podcast, and we've got a brand. We've got a specific font. We've got specific colors, all this stuff. If I want to make a brand guardian that would help Josh and I vet every episode title, all the episode descriptions, every graphic we put out into the world through our social media and stuff. If we wanted a brand guardian, to build that would actually take quite a bit of effort and isn't currently possible with GPT in the way we'd want it to work. We need something that every time we go to this brand guardian, we ask it a question, we give it some materials, it can evaluate that specifically against our brand guidelines. If you did that with ChatGPT, you would literally have to probably write paragraphs on paragraphs on paragraphs, even taking the text out of our brand guideline into a prompt and paste it into every chat you had with GPT, because it's missing that context. It doesn't know where our buddy's house is. It doesn't know who's been coming for the last 2 years. When you get to an AI buddy tool, like Dust, in Dust, they're using the term agent. You make an agent and you give it that purpose. Be my brand guardian. You give it access to the brand guidelines. You give it instructions that says, do not accept or do not offer any color options for, graphics design that are outside of these 6 colors, right? You give it parameters. You make a sandbox. And that's what makes this kind of tool so powerful. When we talk about the faculty who want a writing guide, well, if you go to GPT and you ask for writing assistance, it might give you writing assistance that's relevant to MLA, Chicago, Turabian, APA, all these different formatting types, right? With Dust, we would go into it and say, make an MLA writing style guide assistant or buddy to help faculty write for that purpose. And so not only would it have all of MLA's formatting and style requirements, but you could import stuff that's relevant to your institution or your corporation or your personal need, like make sure not to use the word cheers, or do not only use the passive voice, never use the passive voice. All of those instructions are what become an assistant. It's not just me asking GPT a question, it's framing it in this little space that we can kind of get tactical work accomplished, whether it's brand guide or writing or all sorts of things. And that to me is like the power of this changing of like GPT to Notion to this kind of tool and resource. Like you're getting to very specific tasks as opposed to just help me with anything. You can still help me with anything, but you make assistants for different tasks so that they're experts in what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, you're building that little friend that's an expert in something, right? Like it's the like that friend that if you go to them about that question, right? Like I know if I go to Will about language stuff, he's gonna have some answers for me that another friend might not have, right? Yeah. Our friend Alex, if we ask him anything about a board game, he usually knows something about it and how to deal with it, right? It's the same idea. A practical example of what we're looking at in my space is not the old social platform,
like,
but my
Tom?
my area. No, Tom is not researching with me. Is I'd like to figure out how to set up like an accessibility AI buddy, right? That can look
Yes,
at a course
absolutely.
and like we've set it on our parameters for what our guidelines are for accessibility, and you can plug something in and it can take a look at it and tell you where it's failing accessibility and how to fix it. Right? Like that's a thing that's totally realistic. It would save a ton of time for
Right.
people day to day. It would not take away the humanness of how we work together, but would
Right.
allow us to provide other people resources when they can't always get a hold of that person that's the expert in accessibility, and they get much quicker answers, right? So like that's a practical example. Um, I've seen some people talking about how to do this with like instructional designing, learning and development to try to look at something, not to replace the instructional designer, but be a resource that could be
Yep.
leveraged to kind of call out issues very quickly in things. There's a lot of different ways to do this, right? Like I think we made the joke about the faculty who didn't want AI involved in their thing, right? But like um, you could get an AI set up, like you said, that's a writing assistant that knows all of the very specific parameters your institution has, right? About MLA formatting, about structuring, about citing, and it could become a useful assistant or buddy for your students to be able to quickly get answers on if their paper fits the right formatting that needs to happen without having to wait for you or student services to get back to them, or a writing services person to get back to them. It could be a very quick agent to help them out in
Yeah.
that space, right? And that's where I think so much of the power exists, is being able to kind of create a little expert on a topic that can be leveraged to help get quicker answers and resources and expand really, letting the humans focus on the thing that matters the most while allowing a tool, an AI tool, a buddy to come in and say, I'll help with this space. You tell me what I need to know. I'll help you answer these questions and really disseminate resources and knowledge quicker in a more focused way. I think that's where I see a lot of the power.
Another element to assistance in that world, but our buddies, is that GPT is something I use. And I might share a prompt to other people. There may be Teams versions that we can start to kind of collaborate. I don't think we're there just yet with GPT specifically. But Dust, as our example, as a platform, is built so that anyone you share it with, can work with the assistant, can work with the buddy, right? And so it's not just now that I built it, I can use it. It's like Josh's entire team gets this buddy for accessibility, and they can all ask it a question. They can all ask it the same question or different questions. It's there to help them with the task.
Yeah.
I think we should take a look. I think we should jump
Yeah,
in.
and while you're bringing that up,
this
I'll share
companion
one
did.
last example where I think this helps save time, right? Just to give, again, a practical component of this. We were just spending a ton of time writing up and releasing design guidelines to our teams and trying to disseminate that across. This is a space where, like, one of these tools, an AI buddy, we could write those up, set up an expert in it, and instead of spending hours in training and hours in meetings, that resource is now just provided as a way to kind of disseminate the guidelines. I think thinking of that at a large scale is where I think it's really helpful. Anyway, let's see what we've done, because Will has done some things. He's connected some stuff. He has done some high tech hijinks, if you will. And we'll see where this goes.
Okay, so you got my screen? We
Yep.
on? Sweet. Dust is a platform that is building an ecosystem for AI agents. Currently assistants, but they're building towards agentic AI. Again, that's the AI that will take action for you. Right now, it's not there, but that's the goal. What I built as a demonstration. So this is a paid platform. It is not free. I'm running a trial for this. Like, that's an unfortunate bit, but you need to see what's capable here, so you can consider whether or not it's worth your money, or go find a tool that can do it for you. If you've got something in house, great. But what I built for our demonstration today is an assistant that's an expert in the high tech podcast, right? And so what I can do with this little guy is say, hey, high tech podcast, what was the first episode about? I don't know what it's going to say. Frankly, I've not tested this question specifically, but what it's doing right now is it's checking the information that I put in and trying to check against all of our episodes, and then hopefully return an answer like what our first episode was about. It's also telling me it's syncing, searching, it's looking through specific data searches, and it's looking for something titled episode 1. It's taking this time, kind of like the conversation that the episode we did on perplexity, where we could see it thinking and see its citations. It's going through the process. Now, I know I don't have necessarily information about this. Oh, all right. I didn't give it episode 1. I gave it our notion, and I gave it the internet.
But here's the advantage. Our website pages on the back end technically live on the High Tech Podcast dashboard. So it is able to search the website where those databases live. So the episode pages, I didn't think about that it would actually be able to search that. We were talking about how Notion, depending on how you set stuff up, it's accessing Notion in this example. Databases can be like linked in places, but not live in places. And so we were trying to figure out the best way to get quick information accessed without Will having to spend 3 weeks syncing things, because we have a lot of data in our Notion. So anyway,
I started trying to sync yesterday and it still wasn't synced today.
Yes.
So I was like, I'm just going to change that. So it didn't actually get episode 1. It got the first episode, which was episode 0. What can you tell me about episode 1? So it answered the question accurately.
Yeah.
Right? But it did not give me the information I was looking for. What I didn't know is, dude, March 30th, 2021 is when we did that. We're recording right now on March 25th.
Oh, that's crazy.
So almost 4 full years.
4 years ago was when we did our first episode, the trailer. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, but now giving it the second question, what can you tell me about episode 1? It's got to go back and do the same thinking, and we'll see what it returns. The idea here, though, is not necessarily that we always want to make these tools about the High Tech Podcast. That doesn't need to be the point. But like, if we gave it resource and information on all of the podcasts like this, we might go to the next step, which is help me write something about the podcast. But I'm just trying to prove that it's working here. According to the search results, episode 1 was titled Canva and Conversations. That's correct. And was released on April 6th, 2021. This episode came after the trailer, which was released on March 30th. Wow.
Did those links go directly to Notion right now? If you click on the...
I'm not logged into Notion in this browser, so it's not going to work. But yes, they are.
It would go right there.
I'll copy them. I'll prove it for my own self on a side screen in a second. But like I was saying, the more important part of this is if I have access to this information, we could have it do some stuff for us. So yes, Josh, it took me directly to episode.
Okay.
It actually took me to a search for episode 1.
Interesting. Okay, so let's test out some ideas here. Okay, because I'm gonna challenge Dust to a competition a little bit here, which is, well, not really a competition. It's I've built almost all of these episode pages, so let's see what it remembers. So, okay, let's ask a question, right? So, like, let's be very practical about this. Let's pretend for a second the High Tech Podcast episode pages are not just episode pages. They're a database about educational tools and their usefulness, which at the end of the day, that's actually kind of what our episode pages
That is what we wanted.
are. It was kind of what they were before we stopped doing too much context. So let's ask it this. Based on our episodes, and you can reword this however it needs. You've worked with Dust more than I have. But based on our episodes, what are several video tools that could be recommended to teachers?
It'd be good if I could type. We'll see, right?
We'll see.
We'll see what I do with creative editing here about whether or not I show all the search time, because I have no clue how long each of these are going to take.
Yeah, it seems to be getting a little faster because it's starting to interact
spend time
more.
with it. It's got to get warmed up, crack the knuckles a little bit.
Oh, it found Loom already. It said, let me search more
Loom.
video tool recommendations besides Loom. Which, okay, real quick, just a note, what I like about what it's doing so far, this is kind of like Perplexity, where it's telling you what it's doing while it's doing it. I kind of dig that. That's kind of cool. So, did it say it found 3, but then, it went beyond that. It listed out several things. Okay.
And then it's referencing the Loom episode, the Screencast-O-Matic episode, and the Snagit episode. And you could go and find information.
Yeah,
on each
it
of
listed
those.
out some stuff on all of this, which that's true. We would recommend all of those video tools. Would they be our top 3? I don't know if Screencast-O-Matic would be, but like the is definitely, we've talked about all of those positively on the podcast before, so
Absolutely.
that's for sure. Here's a different game. Will,
Okay.
let's ask it if it would. This is gonna be dangerous, but one of them is not really around much
I
anymore.
hope you're thinking what I'm thinking.
So it's
frankly,
okay.
'cause I'm excited
Let's
for my idea.
let's ask them if it would pick perusal or hypothesis as a tool. Which tool would it recommend? And then I want to hear what you were thinking, because I think that would be funny.
Helps if I spell correctly.
Yeah.
The idea I have is to have it look through all of our episodes and help us write the next episode. So what I'm going to say,
I like that. That's a cool idea.
190 episodes. What would episode 191 be? Right? That's what I'm going to have it project for us in a second.
Remember, technically, as we're recording this, it will not know that we have 190 episodes. It will think whatever we've released.
We only have 189 out, right?
Yeah, 88 or 80. I don't remember where we're at right now.
We have to tell it the
honest.
accurate number.
We can ask it how many episodes we have right now. That would be. Though honestly, we would have over 190. I forgot about this the other day because when we were still doing the episodes
the
that were the interviews. Technically, we've reached, I think, our 200th episode.
Joshua.
Unofficially, I think, is what I realized the other day, that we had technically reached our 200th episode.
Good for us.
We are at 189. Yep, sorry. We're like right up against where we're releasing. I'm not used to that.
So, here's what it's saying. Based on the podcast coverage, here's a recommendation based on your needs. Choose perusal if you want these things. Choose hypothesis if you want these things. In summary, perusal is better for a comprehensive classroom solution, while hypothesis is better for simpler web-based annotation.
Oh my gosh!
That's pretty
fair.
That's
basically really... what we said between... Okay, so for context, people who are listening, if you have not listened to all of our episodes, we've done... This is older podcast poll. We have not talked about either of these tools in a while. But we were really on to talk about digital annotation for a while back in the early days of the High Tech Podcast. And we did a lot of talking about perusal and hypothesis. They were both tools that we've talked to the actually people from both those tools.
Yep.
And we also did our own episodes on them. So we've done some context. And that is literally basically what the conclusion we came to in several of our episodes, which was we liked both of them, but they were for slightly different reasons.
Yeah. And I think that I think that what I liked about this is we kind of tried to get it to pit it against, or even maybe find our bias. I think you and I both have a bias on this question, and it didn't bite. In one sense, it's like, no. It came up with a, yes, maybe this better for that than this, but there's a reason, not just like, oh, Will and Josh eventually didn't like hypothesis as much. It's like, no, this is more comprehensive classroom solution. Hypothesis is better for this other thing. Great. That's what if we release this to the public, that's the answer I would want it to give, which is good.
That was a solid answer. I 100% love that answer. I think that was a good answer.
All right. Let's see. All right, so I asked how many episodes does it have. Based on this, it's reached episode 189. Good, and has continued through multiple seasons, with season 7 marking a significant expansion beyond just education topics.
What?
Look at that.
That's wild, because it's 100% true.
Based on the existing episodes, 1 through 189. What would you suggest we record for episode 190? Let's see what it does. Right? So now it's going to go look at the entire corpus of the podcast and suggest something to us.
That last answer was kind of wild. It picked up it gave some context.
This was season
7.
That's
super cool. That's incredibly true. And while I'm impressed by that because it can search all of our episode pages, but if I'm understanding, it can't. Can it look at our videos? It can't look at the video content, right?
Or probably not, because they're embedded from a third party on that page.
And it can't. Can
if
it
we
look
had
at
the
the
transcripts there, it would.
It can't look at the. I'm assuming it can't look at the files attached to the episode pages, right? No, yeah, because that's not actually embedded in the. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. We're getting
Probably
a little
not.
too contextual right now. I was just kind of thinking out loud.
That's stuff for next week's episode. Okay. Based on recent episodes and trends, here's a suggestion for 190. The future of learning spaces featuring virtual reality. Recent episodes have covered AI and gaming, but haven't deeply explored VR in educational workspaces. The podcast has evolved beyond just education. There's been a focus on how tech impacts productivity and such. With recent episodes about learning on YouTube, it'd be interesting to explore other immersive learning environments. I think that this is effective information. I don't agree with it for what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, I mean,
right
it's
now,
limited.
but...
It wasn't a fair question. It's just looking at our episodes and having to come up with some random recommendation. Okay. Let's ask it this.
Let's do one last question.
One last question, right? Like, let's ask it what would be a tool it would avoid based on our information here. This is this is a hilarious example because like most people aren't going to do this to their episode pages, right? But what's interesting about this is these are all good examples of questions that if you perused our database, you could probably find information on. But you're now able to talk to someone who is an expert in every episode we've ever done, right? And so it's going to be able to give you a more contextual answer much quicker than you would be able to just by looking at everything, right?
The other element that I'll add into this, like we did not go into making this week. We're actually going to do that next week. Josh and I changed up some of the ideas for this episode, the next two episodes. So I am going to show more about how this works next week, but something to consider. Or did you already read a little bit?
Yeah, I already read it.
I'm going to let it continue to generate because I don't want to spoil it for myself. Something that we want to consider here is when I wrote the instructions for this buddy, this assistant, this agent, whatever the name you want to call it, I did not consider these generative options. All I told it was keep it focused, keep it concise, retrieve information. If Josh and I wanted to use this tool to actually write content for the podcast, I would add into the instructions, look for biases, look for, tools that have closed and make sure you exclude those. Like a tool like Archer doesn't exist anymore. Like look for, I would give it more instructions to make sure that if we asked it, like, what should we avoid, that it had more context on that. Cause this agent doesn't currently. So it is actually doing a good job with very little information, but it's making this information up for us. Now, answering Josh's question, what would be a tool to avoid? Based on the podcast's episodes, there are two notable tools they specifically advised against: Turnitin and remote proctoring.
That is true. We did say against both of those things. I think it was a test because I knew Turnitin was one we've said we hate multiple times on the podcast. Yep. So one last one, Will. I know we said that was our last one, but I have one last one. We need to close the debate on this forever. Not our website. That's not what I'm going to ask because I don't know we can get that from our episode pages. Okay. Who has been a guest on the High Tech Podcast the most?
Oh, that's good. That's good. Robin, Justin, are you ready? We're about to know. Hopefully,
Steve Mileto, he's also in the running.
Steve, Robin, and Justin.
Steve, Robin, and Justin, you listen to this part carefully. We're gonna see what the High Tech Pod.
I scrolled up so it can generate and think without us watching.
Yep. We want to give it its time. We don't want to.
This is good. Well done, Josh.
I really wanted to know. I think we finally have. We should have also titled this, by the way, not at High Tech Pod. We should have called it at High Tech Pod Fan. Fam, had like a fun name to it. Just a side note. This is for finally we are going to get the hard facts. Who has been the most appearing guest on the High Tech Podcast?
Oh, it's still thinking.
It's still looking. Oh no! We've broken it. No, I'm just joking. This is such a hard debate. Even Dust is not sure. Oh!
6 episodes.
Oh! It's been decided. Robin Jeffers of the Robin S. Jeffers taxonomy series has been the most reoccurring guest on the High Tech Podcast. This is interesting. So, Robin, if you're curious, you've appeared on 6 episodes. And then notable runner-ups. Justin Harbin's made 5 appearances. And Steve Miletto has come multiple times.
I don't actually agree with it. I think we've at least done 3 episodes with him, and it's only
with Steve. Yeah,
2.
No, I think it probably just commented on 2.
Robin Jeffers is described as an old friend of the podcast
and has contributed expertise from her background. This is fun. It's like, so it says Robin Jeffers is described as an old friend of the podcast, has contributed expertise from her background in instructional design and education across multiple seasons of the show, which is a very good. I am sad this is only a test because I really wish we still had access to this long term, because it would be super helpful for episode information.
It might not be accurate here because she was on the Robin S. Jeffers series of episodes, and that's not listed.
Taxonomies and dot storming. That's a part of that episode.
But the episodes were all titled Robin S. Jeffers
not
series.
Not in the website.
Not Notion.
No, because that would have been way too much to put in the episode title.
On the titles. Okay.
So,
okay,
I think Fink's Taxonomy and Fan School is
sense.
actually the episode that's a part of that
sense.
series, and Taxonomy and dot storming was the thing that triggered it.
Aha, see?
Steve Miletto's been on 4 episodes.
About Steve.
Yeah. But it's still not wrong if Robin's been on 6.
Yeah.
So, in its defense, it wasn't wrong. It didn't say Steve's only been on 2. It said it has appeared in notable episodes. Notably, recently, these 2 episodes.
Steve is also an old friend of the podcast, but he is referred to as the man, the myth, the legend, and the voice. So it missed that one, but holy smokes.
Wow.
Nailed it. Dust nailed it.
That's crazy. That's super cool. Oh, man, I love this.
I'll have to send you the link or something so you can just play with it yourself.
Yeah, now I want to play with it.
Next episode, not to kick us off to the end of it, but next episode where I'm going to break down how I built this, and we're probably going to have play with this a little bit more ourselves before then, because I'm using this in my day job. So we've been piloting Dust in my day job. I've been writing assistants in that context, and this is the first time where I kind of pulled it out and using it on this trial for personal purposes. But it's a lot of fun. It's really neat, and what we didn't get to demonstrate tonight, but is a significant part of this is. One assistant or one buddy can reference more than one data source, right? So you saw a lot of information tonight, and it kept citing our Notion database, but it can cite the internet. It can cite Google Drive. It can cite Slack. It can look in across a number of different platforms. And so, think of the power a tool like this might have for an instructional designer, right? So Josh's team as an example, I think y'all use Web's Depth of Knowledge, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you also have like some internal requirements and even systems for instructional design. Like you've got a blueprinting process.
We have a blueprinting process. We hypothetically have a knowledge base inside Notion that's 200 pages large.
Hypothetically speaking, actually, it exists.
It exists. We have a knowledge base. Which I wanted to call.
I'll just take those 2 things as an example, but like, of course, folks, you can take this to 3, 5, 7, 18 different items if you want to. You make a Notion assistant, you make a Dust assistant, you plug it into their Notion database, you give it all the information on Web's Depth of Knowledge. Of course, that could be in their Notion already, but you could point out to information on the internet or whatever, and then you could make a little assistant, a buddy whose sole job is writing learning outcomes. Learning objectives, right? It would have all the information that their teams have on the requirements for learning objectives, and then it would help them write the objectives on Web's Depth of Knowledge or Bloom's taxonomy, or rinse and repeat, all these things. You can build it for these tasks. It's just so cool how effective it is at being your buddy. And then Dust stands out because they want you to integrate to the other platforms. You can put Dust in Slack or Teams or all these other things where it could just be something that you in your working environment. Like you could just be in Notion or be in Slack and be like, wait a second, at High Tech Brand Guide, right? High Tech Brand Guide, what's the color code for our blue? And it would answer the question wherever you are. I might be overspeaking. I don't know if Dust is in all of those platforms yet, but I know that they're in Slack already because that's what we're testing. And you can use that kind of call out, just be like, wherever I am, hey, call at High Tech Podcast, what is the blah, blah, blah answer to this brand issue? So Tune in next week, right? Come in for more of the how we do this and how it works, because that's going to, I think, drive you towards what's possible with tools like this. I'm loving on Dust. Their team's great, their tool's great, but you know us in the High Tech Podcast. If you find a competitor, if you find something else, or if you figured out a way to do this with ChatGPT for your own purposes, that's great. The goal for us is saving time.
Yeah.
And driving towards this more efficient workflows with an AI buddy who's practically sitting next to you going, yeah, man, we got this. Let's dig in and get this stuff done. So that's my spiel. That's my bit on the AI buddies, how this tool's working, what we can do with our podcast tool. I don't think we have anything else for this episode at this point, right?
Nope. I think we are wrapped, other than just a reminder again, next week we are going to be talking about how to build this in our next episode. So if you are curious about seeing more practical steps about how to do this and what it looks like to use it, next week's episode is going to get more into that, and we're going to continue this Dust conversation. So, yeah.
Until then, find us on Twitter, YouTube, and all the socials at High Tech Podcast or High Tech Pod. I think you can just search one or the other and you'll find us. If you had a Dust buddy for the internet, you just ask your Dust buddy, and it would answer that for you. Email us at inbox@hightechpod.us. Whoever you are, if you're a tool, if you're a platform, if you're a friend like Steven, Robin, or Jeff, Justin, or anybody, you want to be on the podcast, you want to engage with us, you want to sponsor us, please, sure, come on, join. And otherwise, go over to hightechpod.us, our website, for all of our information. So we don't have a Dust buddy out there for you just yet. It's just a trial. But imagine if you could go to that website and ask it these questions. You can do that. It's just going to be manual for now. So head on over to hightechpod.us, see every single one of our episodes on an episode page for your convenience. That's a folk on this wrap.
Awesome.
All right, folk, this is a wrap on this week of the High Tech Podcast. Empowering minds.
Embracing tech.
Cheers.
Buckle up, let's ride the wave. Future's calling, tech to crave. High Tech Podcast, light the way. Join the journey, click and play.